Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this video is on innovation and changing. And of course, if you've been in my classes before, you know that I talk a lot about how important it is for organizational leaders to have a focus on innovation, and that change is always going to be something that they need to be planning for and creating a culture that helps create quick and fast changes. And it really is important to really understand what these criteria are. As a result of not changing, of course, organizations die. And we see many different examples throughout history of organizations that kept doing things the way that they've done, but thanks to technology, everything's changing. We are in a global marketplace. So let's get right into this video on innovation and change. Here's some things that we are going to talk about. We're going to talk about how technology has changed things, and looking at criteria on which to base technological decisions. We're going to compare key ways of acquiring new technologies and evaluate the elements of an innovative organization. We're going to talk what it takes to become world class and describe how to manage change effectively, and then list some tactics for creating successful futures. So let's dive right in and talk about forces that drive technological development. So one, there's a need for demand of the technology that must exist. Two, meeting the need must be theoretically possible, and the knowledge to do so must be available from basic science. And three, we must be able to convert the scientific knowledge into practice in engineering and economic terms. So let's talk about these more. There are two fundamental types of innovation. Process innovations are the changes that affect the way outputs are produced, and this means we have to consider flexible manufacturing practices such as just-in-time, mass customization, simultaneous engineering, and then product and service innovations are changes in the actual outputs, the goods and services that are produced. These two categories cover a multitude of creative new ideas, and they can change product offerings, the basic platforms featuring in processes and that are used to create processes, customer problems the organizations can solve, the types of customers the organization serves, the nature of the experience provided by the organization, the way the organization earns money from what it does, the efficiency and effectiveness of its purposes, the structure of the organization, supply chain through which it delivers the goods and services, physical and virtual points at which it interacts with customers, and the ways organizations communicate, and the brand associated with the organization and its products. So critical forces converge to create new technologies. Understanding these forces driving technological development can help a manager anticipate, monitor, and manage technologies more effectively. So driving forces include funding, skilled labor, time, space, and other resources needed to develop technology that need to be available. And then entrepreneurial initiative must really identify and pull all necessary elements together. So we talk a lot about measuring when we talk about management. And so doing a technological audit, that's the process of clarifying the key technologies on which the organization depends, includes emerging technologies, pacing technologies, key technologies, base technologies. So let's talk about these a little bit. One technique for measuring competitive value sorts technologies into several categories according to their competitive value. Emerging technologies are still under development, but may significantly alter the rules of competition in the future. Managers should monitor and develop the emerging technologies, but may not need to invest in them until they've been more fully developed. Pacing technologies have yet to prove their full value, but have the potential to provide significant advantage that alters the rules of competition, and managers should develop or invest in pacing technologies because of competitive advantages that they can provide. And then key technologies have proved effective but offer strategic advantage because not everyone uses them. Eventually, alternatives to key technologies can emerge, but until then, key technologies can give organizations a significant competitive edge and make it much harder for new entrants to threaten the organization. And then finally, base technologies are the commonplace in the industry. Everyone wants to have them. They provide little competitive advantage, but managers have to invest to ensure that their organizations continue competence in the technology. So technologies can evolve rapidly through each of these different categories. So an emerging technology example could be autonomous vehicles, passenger-carrying spacecraft, pacing technology, advancements in robotics, 3D printing, key technologies, mobile internet, cloud technology, and then base technology, example, computer networks and productivity software. So let's talk about assessing external technological trends. So as with any planning decisions about technology, that must balance internal capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses with external opportunities and threats. To understand how technology is changing within industry, managers can use techniques we introduced earlier in other videos. So benchmarking, this compares the organization's practices and technologies with other companies. Like environmental scanning focuses on what can be done and what is being developed. It emphasizes in identifying and monitoring the sources of new technologies for the industry. It could also include reading cutting-edge research journals, attending conferences and seminars, and organizations that operate close to the cutting edge of technology rely more on scanning. So again, benchmarking is the process of comparing the organization's practices and technologies with those other companies, and environmental scanning focuses on what can be done and what is being developed, and emphasizes identifying and monitoring the sources of new technologies for an industry. Engaging in disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is a process by which a product, service, or business model takes root initially in simple applications at the bottom of the market and then moves up the market and eventually displacing the established competitors. Here are some key factors to consider in technological decisions: anticipated market receptiveness, technological feasibility, economic viability, anticipated capability development, and then organizational suitability. So all of these considerations jointly influence managers' decisions about technology and innovation. So essentially, we need to know where to get new technologies. It's about make or buy decisions. It's the question an organization has to ask itself about whether to acquire new technologies from an outside source or develop it itself. And they each have many alternatives and advantages and disadvantages, as you can consider. So when you're considering where to get new technologies, there's internal development, purchasing them, of course, contracting someone to develop it, licensing, technology trading, research partnerships, joint ventureships, acquisition of the owner of the technology. We have to also know about asking the right questions. Is it important and possible in terms of competitive advantage that the technology remain proprietary? 2, are the time, skills, and resources for internal development available? 3, is the technology readily available outside of the company? So the answers to these questions guide managers to the most appropriate technology acquisition options. So is it important and possible in terms of the competitive advantage that the technology remain proprietary? Are the time and skills, resources for the internal development available? And is the technology readily available outside of the company? Simple enough, right? So who is responsible for new technology innovations? Good question. Well, generally speaking, most organizations have a chief information officer. And the CIO, or Chief Information Officer, coordinates the technological effects of the various business units and identify ways that technology can support the company's strategy. There could be technical innovators, and that's a person who develops a new technology or has key skills to install and operate the new technology. And then a product champion, and that's a person who promotes the idea through the organization, searching for support and acceptance. So with the executive champion, that's an executive who has the status, authority, and financial resources to support the project and protect the product champion. If the champion lacks the power and financial resources to make the required changes independently, he or she must convince people in authority to support the innovation. In other words, product champions must get sponsorship. Sponsorship comes from the executive champion, who has the status, authority, and financial resources to support the project and protect the product champion. And this person's support and protection enable new technology by promoting the change and making available the resources needed to develop the innovation. So all companies really must think about becoming world-class. Being world-class requires applying the best and latest knowledge and ideas and having the ability to operate at the highest standards of any place. So world-class companies create high-value products and earn superior profits over the long run. So every manager and leader really needs to be thinking about becoming world-class and recognize what that means. So you have to think about the question about tyranny or versus genius of the and. And so tyranny of the or, the belief that must be either A or B and cannot be both. And it's a belief that only one goal can be attained often and is invalid. So genius of the and is the ability to achieve multiple objectives at the same time. So organizational development systematically shapes success. OD, or organizational development, is the system-wide application of behavioral science knowledge to develop, improve, reinforce the strategies, structures, and processes that lead organizational effectiveness. So we talked a lot in my videos about organizational development. Two features of organizational development are important. First, it aims to increase organizational effectiveness, improving the organization's ability to respond to customers, stockholders, governments, employees, and other stakeholders, which results in better quality products, higher financial returns, and high quality work life. Second, OD has an important underlying value orientation. It supports human potential development and participation in addition to performance and competitive advantage. So OD techniques fit under a philosophical umbrella. You have to learn about these throughout your education, truly to help make your organization better. So strategically helps organizations conduct mergers, acquisitions, change strategies, and develop alliances. Technological structure, enhancing organization structure, design, employee involvement and work design. Human resource management, attracting good people, setting goals, appraising and rewarding performance. And then human process, that's improving conflict resolution, team building, communication, and leadership. So one of the great books out there is actually Good to Great, and it's a philosophy of transforming an organization to make it even better. G is all about focusing on customers, continually fine-tuning and making the necessary marketplace changes, and then clearly communicating that to employees. Execution deals with good people, with decision-making authority on the front lines, doing quality work, and then cutting costs. A study of 200 management techniques employed by 160 companies over 10 years identified the specific management practices that led to sustained superior performance. So the uh, the authors boiled their findings down to really 4 factors. Strategy that is focused on customers, continually fine-tuned based on the marketplace changes and clearly communicated to employees. Execution by good people, given decision-making authority on the front lines who are doing quality work and then cutting costs. And the following 2 points, which I'll talk about here in a second. Culture that motivates and empowers people to innovate, reward, and appropriately, psychologically as well as economically, entails strong values, challenges people, and provides satisfying work. And then structure that makes the organization easy to work and and characterized by cooperation and the exchange of information and knowledge throughout the whole organization. So motivating people to change is something that needs to consider. The general reasons for people resisting change are inertia, things are already moving along, why change it, timing, surprise, peer pressure. Some specific change resistance includes self-interest, misunderstanding, different assessments, and then managing tactics. So everybody sees things differently, and leaders really need to take these things into consideration. So one model that we talk about when we talk about change has to do with freezing and unfreezing and refreezing. And so in unfreezing, it's about breaking from the old ways of doing things and then moving things, instituting the change, and then refreezing, reinforcing and supporting the new ways. So an example of unfreezing is a company decides to switch to the cloud for data storage. Moving, the IT department transfers data to the cloud, and then refreezing, employees are trained on using the new storage system. We also need to consider the force field analysis, and that's an approach to implementing Lewin's unfreezing, moving, and refreezing model by identifying the forces that prevent people from changing and those that will drive people toward the change. So here are some basic ways to overcome resistance to change. 1, communicate why the change is needed. 2, involve key stakeholders. 3, provide support and resources. 4, offer incentives and encourage change. 5, work tactics when needed. And then 6, make the change happen. So there is no single shot method of changing organizations successfully. Single shots rarely hit a challenged target. Usually, many issues need simultaneous attention, and any single small change will be absorbed by prevailing culture and disappear. Total organization change involves introducing and sustaining multiple policies, procedures, practices across multiple units and levels. This kind of change affects the thinking and behaviors of everyone in the organization and can enhance the organization's culture and success and can be sustained over time. Here are some examples of questions to ask before embarking on a change project. What is the evidence that the approach really can produce positive results? Is the approach relevant to your company's strategies and priorities? What are the costs and potential benefits? Does it really help people add value through their work? Does it help company focus better on customers and what they value? And can you go through the decision-making process and understand that you're facing and you feel that you're taking the right approach? So I just want to reiterate Kotter's leading change model. So Dr. John Kotter from Harvard University. So successful change requires managers to actively lead. Essentially, activities of leading change, these steps, And it starts with 1, establishing a sense of urgency. 2, create a guiding coalition. 4, communicating the vision of change. 5, empowering broad-based action. 6, generating short-term wins. 7, consolidating gains and producing more change. And then finally, anchoring new approaches in the culture. So this video, we talked about assessing technology needs, criteria used for technology decisions, including market receptiveness, feasibility, and viability. We discussed acquiring new technology, elements of innovation, what does it mean to be world-class, how to manage change, including shared leadership and then the implementers, and then tactics for successful futures. So there's a lot to know about creating change and innovation. I hope that you've taken something away of value from this video. And even more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul.